Welcome back to another episode of the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and grow the game of tennis at all levels. My friends call me Ship, but this show isn't about me. We will be bringing you interviews with coaches, community leaders, and players, along with updates about tennis happening around the world. Tennis is a culture, and we are all writing tennis history together. Today, I'm here with James McGee. James, originally from Ireland, during his professional playing career, broke into top 150. He had a playing career of a little over 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, and had the opportunity to play at least the qualies at all the slams. He had the opportunity to play main draw US Open. James is now retired from his playing career. It has been for a few years now. He's the co-director of the No Quit Tennis Academy in Las Vegas, and also has been a director for the Inspiring Children Foundation for a little over 4 years now. James, welcome to the pod.
Ship, thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we got connected through my good friend Jeff Solzenstein recently, and Jeff's a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for years. He coached me on the tour, and it's a pleasure to be here with you and to learn from you. And look forward to chatting.
I have really enjoyed this journey of getting to pick different people's brains, but I enjoy different cultures, and I think it's fun sometimes to get that tennis perspective from someone who maybe grew up playing juniors in a different country, because obviously, they say comparison is the thief of joy. However, it's just nice to kind of hear maybe what other countries are doing well, or what they could be doing better, or even trying to compare those things to what's going on here in the US. So I'm really looking forward, to picking your brain. I want to start really quick. Obviously, you've been coaching now for at least 5 years, and I'm sure, like any tennis person, this game is the ultimate game of giving back. It's not like you ever probably didn't give a lesson at some point or work with someone while you're playing. But
sure.
I want to know, what do you feel like a quality practice session looks like?
Well, there's a lot there's a lot that could go into that. I mean, the first answer I would say is it depends, right? It depends on who you're working with. It depends on what that person is trying to achieve. It depends their age. Are we talking a beginner? Are we talking a junior player, a college player?
Whatever your expertise is and wherever you want to go.
My first thing would be to ask them, where are you at? What are you trying to get to? What are you trying to learn? Are you competing in tournaments right now? Are you in a training block? It really kind of depends. So I would spend a good portion of the time trying to figure out what we're trying to work on. And then from there, some people, by the way, they work better with they might not work as well just player and coach. They might work better hitting with another player, and then the coach is at the back of the court. Some players respond differently. Some players are better in kind of a doubles practice rather than a singles practice. So to get a high quality practice, I mean, again, it depends. So it's hard to answer that right, like give you a clear answer, because I'd like to have a certain scenario. But the way I like to structure my practices, I'll give you an example of how I do it in Las Vegas here with a number of the junior players that I work with. A number of them now are high performance juniors. They're playing sectional tournaments. They're playing national tournaments. They want to play college. Some of them want to play pro. And I've spoken about this before with other people, but I'm a big believer in purposeful practice. So the minute the player steps on the court, I don't care if you're hitting balls in the boxes and you're just getting started, there is a purpose to everything. So a lot of players that I see, and I've got the privilege of being the co-director at the No Quit Tennis Academy, along with Dave McPherson, who coached Bob and Mike Bryan for 15 years. He coached John Isner for 7, and I've had the chance to learn from other coaches. But with juniors, when I watch them practice, I see a lot of wasted time. I see talking during the warm-up. I see a lack of focus on what they're trying to actually accomplish. A lot of people just go back to the baseline and just hit up and down, and they expect to suddenly improve just by just hitting up and down. And of course, there's some value to that, to hitting up and down, but let's put cones down. Let's have a target. Let's put a number of what we're trying to achieve. Maybe we're trying to hit 10 balls past the 60-foot line, and we're trying to get 3 sets of 10. Let's do the same thing with having a player at the net trying to push the baseline or past the baseline. I mean, I could probably spend about 10 hours here talking to you about different drills and different ways we could improve consistency and improve quality and improve understanding of the game and physicality and all that. But to break it down and to give you a simplified answer, I would try to encourage everyone to have purpose to what they do. And the best way to have purpose is have targets, have a number you're trying to achieve, and then try to do it within a certain time frame. And right, so if I'm trying to get 3 sets of 10 balls past the 60-foot line, let's just say for a singles player, let's try to do it within 5 minutes, right? 3 sets of 10 past the 60-foot line within 5 minutes. That's just something that you can challenge yourself to. And for anyone that's, interested in the process of improvement and the process of building muscle memory, because I think that's ultimately what you're asking. It's not just about quality practice, but how can we build muscle memory, and how can we build something to make someone the best that they can possibly be? The process is building myelin, and anyone that's ever read The Talent Code, it's written by Daniel Coyle. It's a fantastic book. He also wrote the book, The Culture Code. He basically describes how to create myelin in your brain, how to create muscle memory. And a lot of it is through what's called deliberate practice and chunking. I think he calls it chunking, where you break a task down to a very specific, kind of like what I mentioned at the start, like be very, very specific, and you work at it. And basically by doing that and by challenging yourself, and the task can't be so hard that you want to give up, and it can't be so easy that you get bored. It has to be somewhere in the middle where, if you give 100% of your attention to that actual task, you're gonna eventually get it, and you're gonna get to the next step. So I try to tailor the practices around that challenge, but obviously it depends on the individual, depends on their energy level. There's some kids that I might give them a lesson and their energy level is 5 out of 10, and I have to get a feel for where they're at and maybe tailor the lesson around that. And maybe instead of doing that type of training, I'd change it to serve and return, or we might do a tactical practice, or there's all types of things that we could ultimately do. But that's where I'll start.
Just a couple notes from that. One, The Talent Code is my favorite book. I read that for the first time when I was 18, changed my life. Love that book. The Little Book of Talent, also excellent. So if anyone's not read those books, they should. I think they're phenomenal. The second thing I want to say is I think sometimes people watch the pros and not enough of other levels, and the pros make everything look so easy. You watch Roger Federer hitting, on YouTube, and you just think, wow, it's so effortless. And you think he just goes out there and he's just hitting balls. Or you go to Cincinnati Open or Miami Open, and you see those top guys on a side court and they're warming up, they're just hitting balls. That's not what they're doing. Everything they're doing is so intentional. I got the opportunity, I came across this video one time, and it was like a long extended Federer training session, and he was mic'd up and talking through everything that he was doing, and I
watched that as well.
It's so good. Well, the thing that he
still
says,
on YouTube.
Yes, go watch it if you've not seen that. But one of my favorite takeaways from that was he's like, now I'm going to try to air out the ball. I'm going to see if I can hit the baseline. And that's the first thing that he says whenever they go back to the baseline is, okay, now I'm going to really air out the ball, get good height over the net, and try to hit the baseline. So even when there's not a target there, he's so good that his target is, I'm trying to hit this line. And he's okay with if he misses deep a little bit a couple times or whatever. There's so many young people, they're afraid to, overhit or miss or whatever that might be. He's trying to hit that line. So he's got that target in his head when he's warming up. There's never a ball that he hits where there's not some type of intention, even from the beginning of the warm-up. And I think that's a great takeaway. I think you and I might be very aligned when it comes to coaching. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yes, preach. Preach. So that's awesome. I love all of that. My follow-up question would be a couple things. First and foremost, you're talking about all these, high level junior players that you're getting the opportunity to work with. What do you feel like, obviously, other than being purposeful within their practices, what do you feel like ultimately top level junior tennis players should be focused on?
Well, a lot of the top junior tennis players, I would say the vast majority of them are looking to go to college. And of those, a small percentage are looking to go pro. So, one thing that I like to do is I like to ask college coaches, what are you looking for? Like, what are you actually looking for on your team? And we have the privilege in Las Vegas here of having coaches come out, watch our practices, and then we do fireside chats where, the kids sit down in the bleachers. We introduce the college coach and we ask them, hey, like, what are you looking for on your team? And, the first thing the vast majority of the top college coaches look for, they're like, we want a kid with good character. We want a kid with the right values. We want a kid who's a leader. We want a kid who can be a team player and has good teamwork. These are vital. These are the first things they talk about, and they haven't even talked about forehands and backhands. They haven't talked about physicality. They haven't talked about anything like that. So you've got to look at the spirit of the player first. You got to say, and the type of person that you're trying to create. It's not just the tennis player; it's the person that ultimately you are coaching. Right, it's the person and helping build a person of strong character and a strong personality, who's a fighter, someone that's willing to face adversity, someone that's willing to put in the hard work day in, day out. So, my focus primarily would be on that side. Because I know that's the most important thing. Because let's face it, we've all seen a million players out there who are great tennis players, but they don't have the head or their heart's not in it. What's the point of that? We've got to have great people and great players at the same time. So I think being a great person is, and the values that looks, the values of a great person is the most important thing. And then going into the actual playing style, interesting. It kind of depends. I remember when I went to college, there was talk about amongst players, like every college coach just wants you to go out there and grind and make balls and be the most physical guy of all time and be a fighter. The way I see it now is everyone's unique. Everyone has their own style. Everyone has their own personality, and it's a matter of playing to your strengths. And so again, like the first, I would look at, is this person a competitor? Is this person able to compete on a bad day? And that's something I look at, because let's face it, none of us play well every time we get on the tennis court. Most of us struggle. You're never going to hit the ball that clean. You can work on it and you can try and work on your timing and you can focus on a few tips here and there. But the reality of it is, like, tennis, like we know, is not a game of perfect. There's going to be challenges. So I would look at developing people that have a strong character, that are fighters, that are problem solvers tactically, because you've got to be able to turn matches around, right? When something's not going well, if you're playing a big server and he keeps acing you down the tee on the due side, I want to see a guy move back and cover the tee and force the guy to ace them out wide. That's just a small example. Obviously, from my game style, because when I was on the tour, I was a solid baseliner. I got into a lot of rallies. I tried to play very physical tennis. I like to see people that are solid from the back of the court, because that's the core of the game. You could argue that the two most important shots are serve and return, which they are. And so I would be looking at players that have a solid serve and return. They're solid from the back. They're great competitors. And, if you have someone that can get to the net, like a Ben Shelton, who kind of has it all put together, you're looking at a star player. But that's kind of where I would start. And I will say, I know, because I know
you're fine. You're fine.
Because we have, different tournaments here in Las Vegas and sectional tournaments, and we've got the kids from SoCal coming to Nevada and competing. And one thing I've noticed about these SoCal kids, because obviously SoCal produces a lot of great tennis players, these kids can stay in rallies for extended periods of time. They can their rally threshold, I feel, is quite high. And you know, it's tough when you're losing matches because the other guy's more solid than you. You know, like, you know, it's not a nice way to lose a tennis match because the other guy's just more solid. So, you know, I think really developing the fundamental base of your game and actually being able to stay in points and be physical is obviously super, super important as well.
No, I love all of that. I guess a follow-up from that would be just a couple of notes for people listening, understanding, you know, hearing the way that, you know, you're taking your coaching mind and you're putting that to it, but from the perspective of you were top 150 in the world. And during that year that you were top 150, if we're going to, I really want to change the conversation around, because people, if you're not Novak Djokovic, you're a scrub. You know, that's for average fans, and that's the media needs to do a better job. There was during Wimbledon, John McEnroe made a comment about having not seen someone play since 2019, and the person was like top 40 in the world. You know, it was something crazy. And I can't remember, it might have been 2019, maybe 2 years ago or something, when he played some match. And everyone's like, does John watch tennis when he's not, you know? Anyway, so the point is, we need the people broadcasting do a better job of explaining and knowing what they're talking about. But for people who are listening, you need to understand, if you're seated at a slam, you're top 30 in the world. That's an NBA all-star. Those guys are multi-millionaires. You're top 30 in the world. That means if you were on an NBA roster playing basketball, a different sport, right? You'd be a top best player or the second best player on your team in the NBA. Being top 150 in the world means you're a starter. There are 30 teams with a starting five. 150, right? 150 right there. 30 times 5. 150 means you're a starter in the NBA. Everybody in that market knows your name. You're probably making $10 to $20 million a year, and you know that was not what you were making being 150 in the world. So obviously, from top to bottom, the ATP needs to be making some changes. I would love to see us cap how much the champion of these tournaments is making, and I loved seeing that they opened up the Masters 1000s draws this year, going to 96 for main draw and things like that. I think they're trying some things, and hopefully it'll continue to get better. But the point is, perspective. You're a quality player, and hearing you say those things, I'm hoping people are taking that in. Not just that you're a great coach, but you've done these things. Like, and people need to understand that. Like, being top 150 in the world is tough. This is a dog eat dog world, and in tennis, it's essentially boxing at 80 feet. You're trying to take this person out because that's who gets the check. So hearing you say those things and them being things that I align with as a coach, hearing it from someone who's played at the level that you have, it's exciting because I have players that I want them to listen to this episode. I can already tell you right now, because you're saying things that I say all the time, which makes me excited.
You look at someone like Chris Eubanks, who's you know, most eyes are on him right now after his run in Wimbledon to the quarterfinals. You know, I used to practice with Chris when he was at Georgia Tech. I lived in Atlanta. We used to practice there when he was in college. You know, I believe at the beginning of the year, or at least sometime in like February or March, he was about 140 in the world this year. He even said he spent the last 5 years between the 150 to 220 range. And then in the last year, you know, all of a sudden he's 31 in the world. And that's, you know, fair play to him for putting in the work, fair play to him for doing what he had to do. He wins a tour event before Wimbledon. He goes in, it makes the quarters. He qualified and he did well in Miami earlier this year. And he's earned that, you know. But the reality of it is, men's tennis, professional tennis, the depth is unbelievable. And let's just, like, all you have to do is go back, pull out the top 100 rankings, pull out the top 200. You're going to see guys there that were top 30 in the world before. And Tennis Sangren, I think Tennis, who's a good friend of mine, made the quarters of the Aussie Open, had match points on Federer, 8 or like
seven of them.
Yeah, like 7 match points.
I watched that match, and as an American was going, oh, I love Roger Federer. This can't happen. But also, oh my gosh, could it please happen? And I was like, yeah, anyway, go ahead. That was a tough match to watch. Obviously for him too. So
yeah, it was tough. it was tough to watch, but there are countless examples like that. And tennis, probably got injured, dropped out to like 400 or 500, whatever he did. He's working his way back now. But if he's 400 in the world, he's playing futures and challengers again. And people don't understand that yet. A year before that, he's had match points against Roger Federer. So, and I could go on and on about the depth in men's tennis. From my point of view, I've played at every level. I played futures, I played college, I played futures, I played challengers, I played ATP 250, 500, 1000, Grand Slams, Davis Cup, pretty much did it all. Got to play against the best, practice with the best. Beat guys like Denis Shapovalov, Francis Tiafoe, Borna Karic, all these guys. And I got to see them as they were growing up and as they were breaking through to the next level. And, the depth in this game is quite remarkable. And, I would agree with you that, the commentators and the broadcasters and the media could do a better job explaining that. They're for the most part, when they're talking about guys outside the top 100, I feel like the conversation is more geared towards they're not making enough money.
More than once they called the challenger circuit semi-pro during the Wimbledon weeks, and I wanted to throat punch somebody with words. I would never actually throat punch someone, but I was why are you doing this to people? It's so frustrating. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it is what it is. And I guess it's education, and it's great that someone like a Chris Eubanks can come up and who's a tennis broadcaster himself on the tennis channel, and he can speak to it because he gets it, he's lived it, he knows the reality of it, and appreciate you and other people talking about it and passionate tennis fans, just so people can really gain an understanding, because the level and the depth is really remarkable. There's 100 players in the top 100, but there's really 300 top 100 players, if that makes sense,
Yes. And also you will probably agree with this too, but the age that you came through at a time. Right now, tennis is the deepest it's ever been in history. I think that I could make that argument. A big part of that, we could do the research behind it. Obviously, greatness manifests greatness. There's a lot of people that were pushing each other and this and that. But modern medicine has changed the expectation for how long people can play. When you've got the money to take care of your body, we've seen all-time greats hang on longer than they ever have. You look at a guy like Roddick, who retired at like 30 years old. And you look at other guys like, Berdych hung on for a long, long, long time. Verdasco's still out there playing. You could go down the list. Monfils is a freak of nature whose body has had injuries, but he's still out there playing. Nishikori, with the injuries that he's had, he would have, 20 years ago, he would have just hung it up. He wouldn't be trying to come back right now. So you've got all these young, and then all of a sudden, then there's my age group. I'm slightly younger than you. It's like the lost generation because they couldn't get past. You guys, your whole generation and age group was trying. You see Roger and Novak and Andy and Rafa and even Stan sneaking in. But there were other just really highly talented, great depth, unreal. And then you've got these freak of nature young people coming in. You look at what Mickelson did. Just literally. This past week, and there's just so many young people gutting because they want it, and they're fearless and talented and athletic. And anyway, you saw the depth, the depth. It's insanity. It's insanity. It's harder that's why the money structure has to change. It has to, because there's too many guys for people to be losing money doing this. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, this is something that in my career, financially, it was a major struggle. I was constantly asking people for money. And, really, when you're outside the top 100 and let's just say you don't come from a wealthy family or you don't come from a wealthy federation, you have to be extremely creative with how you go about your career, because if you don't have a lot of money, because you're not on the Challenger Tour, even if you're winning consistently, it's you're barely breaking even. You're honestly, you're losing money, especially if you're bringing a coach with you. If you have to bring someone with you, which, at the highest level, every top 100 player has a coach with them, because the coach can help them prepare for matches. It can help them go through strategy. You can have a companion. There's a million benefits to having a coach with them. And so from my perspective, what I would do, and I had a blog, jamesmcgeetennis.com, where I would write about it. I wrote a blog post years ago called Financing the Tour, and it got into, I had 100,000 people read this blog post at the time. And basically I discussed how I cut costs on my career and how I made money outside of just playing futures and challengers. And I did it through leagues. So people play leagues in France, in Germany, in Austria, in Italy. They play them all over Europe, and you can play for a club in any of these countries, and they'll pay you pretty significantly to play for them on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and then on the Sunday you fly out and you play your tournament the next week. The problem with that, as you can imagine, is the physical toll that it takes. You're jumping in an airplane after a 3-hour match. You land in a different country. You have a match the next day against a guy that's 200 in the world. It's a grind. It's really, really tough. And so for me, along with playing leagues, I had my blog, and then I would reach out to different sponsors. Some of them were in Ireland, some of them were overseas, and I was basically begging people for money. I was like, would you be able to, help this poor Irish tennis player go for his dream? And so from my perspective, I'm obviously very grateful for anyone that supported me, whether it was financially or even just through emotional energy and positive support. But it is a grind ship. It is a grind for tennis players outside the top 100. It is financially very, very tough.
So here's my plan. Nobody's going to listen to me, but I want to see the slams. I want to see Masters 1000s go to a full 128 draw. And I want to see the slams go to not a 256 draw, but an over 200 draw. We already have all these people in qualies. Well, I got to have qualies. If you're in the draw, you're in the draw. So what you do is top 32, they get a bye, and then you fill the rest of the draw. I think it's, instead of 256, it's it'd be 2 minus 32 spots. I don't know, 56, 24, 224, right? So 224 other people are in this draw. And make it so that if you lose first round, because the ATP tour needs to be sustainable, first round loser gets 30 grand. Period. You've got 4 times a year that if you are in the top 200, you are guaranteed $120,000 to play the rest of your year. Yeah. Then you have qualies at all the other events still. That's fine. But I think that the slams, if those guys that are the top 32 aren't having to play an extra match to win the event, is it going to hurt anything? Probably not. And you and I both know it's going to make great TV, because one of these days that dude ranked 213 is going to be all of a sudden in the quarters. And it's going to be like, wow, what just happened? But basically creating a way to have, I don't want to call it a salary, but essentially a salary. If you knew I am top 200 and now I've got, even if I lose that 4 times, I've got $120,000 to plan the rest of my schedule.
It's a big deal.
It would go a long way.
Yes, very much so.
And then the person winning, it's like, and then you scaffold the money up from there. It would not be hard, because then you're still there's so much money you can structure however you want. The winner could still have $1 million or whatever. Why do they need to make more than $1 million? You and I both know the guys ranked in the top 10 and winning the slams are getting all the sponsor money anyway. Those guys are already making tons of endorsement money. Anyway, I'm on my my soapbox. I'm not even the guy with money on the line. It drives me crazy, because I care. There's a lot of good people in this game that deserve to make a career for all the hard work that they've done. And I think they need to speak up. And I think it's underestimated, but I think Novak's been actually a really big voice in kind of helping the guys not ranked as high. I've heard from different people that, from like a players council perspective, that he's been a part of making sure that money kind of trickles down. And I think, he hasn't said this, but I think if his son wants to play tennis, he'll actually let him. And I think he knows that, he may only, if it goes well, you can have all of the, have the best genetics, all the best coaching in the world, and you could tap out at 200 in the world. And maybe he's like, hey, but if my son wants to do this, I want to make it so that he's financially able to do it. Like, maybe he's thinking long term, like LeBron James and his son. Not quite the same, but I don't know. That's my theory. Well, anyway, I'm going to go back to picking your brain, because I'm talking.
I will say
much.
before you go on to the next thing, Djokovic and Vasek Pospisil You've
Yeah.
probably heard of the PTPA, right? Like the
Yes.
players union. So that is something that they're actually talking about. And I know that that's got a lot of traction, a lot of interest from tons and tons of pros, the likes of John Isner and a bunch of others, because they agree. They agree with what you're saying. It's pretty much everyone is saying what you're saying, and that the structure needs to change, and there has to be a way for these guys that are outside the top 100 to make a living. Like it's incredible the amount of sacrifice you have to make. I mean, for me to get to 150, I actually got to 87 in the race back in 2015. That's the race. That's not the year-end ranking. But to get to 150 and to stay in the top 100, I think I was top 200 for about 5 years, and it just took you have to sacrifice everything. I mean, you really do have to sacrifice everything. And I would say the same goes for anyone that's in the top 200. And so it would be amazing if we could find a way to restructure it and help these lower ranked players, because it's a major struggle. And not to mention, and this isn't just for lower ranked players, but not to mention, and people are starting to talk about it, but I think there's more underneath the iceberg, but not to mention the mental health struggle of so many players on the tour, so many athletes. How many times do we turn on the TV and or the news and we see so-and-so is struggling with their mental health, whether it's in baseball, whether it's in football? I guarantee you it's in tennis, because I'd say it's arguably worse in tennis because it's not a team sport. You're traveling alone. It's the finances are absolutely terrible. It's so physically tough. I think so many tennis players are struggling mentally and emotionally, and it's like the secret thing that's really hurting a lot of players. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, no, I think it goes without saying. And I think that we could talk for an hour plus about the mental health side of some
For
things
sure.
that probably need to be put in place. Being in such an individual sport and all the travel, like you're saying, the loneliness, the tennis is a tough game where it's not there is no, I lost like in college. I may have lost today, but we got a team win. So it's okay.
Yep.
I can let it roll off my back. It's like my wins are
Exactly.
my wins, my losses are my losses. And that could be 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, a first round loss. And all of a sudden
Yep.
you're like, what am I doing here? You're
Yep.
questioning everything. I mean,
Question
can
everything.
be
Yep.
absolutely brutal. So
Yep.
yeah, no, completely shifting gears here.
Yep.
I'm going
Let's
to
do
go
it.
back
Mm-hmm.
slightly to when we're talking about practice here. You've obviously been coaching long enough and playing long enough. When you were trying to be, top 200, you didn't just start off top 200. Everybody goes through a moment where they feel like they're plateauing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something in an individual sport that's so common and maybe even happens more often because it's every single thing that you do is hyper focused. Like it's hard to not be hyper aware of your own development in an individual sport because there's no other
Yep.
distractions, right? Um, let's say a player came to you and they feel like they've plateaued. They came to you and we'll say overall, like you look at the serve, it doesn't need to change. Overall, forehand, backhand, like fundamentally, they're pretty solid, right?
Yep.
And for all intents and purposes, they're trying to take their game from good to great, or great to excellent, or excellent to
Yep.
elite, or elite to world class.
Yep.
Bread and butter. What are you doing with them other than the mental side, which I
Mm.
think is a big part of finding plateau? But
Yep.
physically, do you have any drills or routines or things that you're like, that's a game changer and it was for me, and I know if you do this, that will definitely help you find your next level? Any go-to drills or routines or anything that people might be able to take with them and implement into their own practices?
Well, the first thing I'd say, if that was the case, like hypothetical situation, and someone came to me, they're 200 in the world, they're trying to get to the top 100 or they're whatever ranking they are, and they're trying to get to the next level. I think the benefit of nowadays, and at least on the Challenger Tour, is that pretty much all your matches are live streamed.
Mm.
And so there's a massive benefit just to be able to watch your matches. Like now we've got the iPhone. There's really no excuse as to why we can't see ourselves play, because what I've discovered, or what I noticed talking to juniors and even pro players, is that when you ask them what's happening, from their experience, they'll explain something totally different than what you'll see on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of players don't want to see the truth. So I'll give you an example with me. after matches, there was a number of matches that I would have lost because my forehand let me down, right? I didn't step into my forehand at the right time. I didn't attack properly, but I would never want to admit that to myself after the match because my ego would get hurt, right? Your egos get in the way all the time. And so once I started having my matches recorded on the Challenger Tour and I'd go back and watch it, I'd be like, holy crap, like my forehand really did let me down, or my second serve let me down. It's landing too short and guys are attacking it. So I think the first thing is diagnosing what the problem is. Like, let's actually see, is it, because I know your question was about physicality and physical fitness, but is that the actual problem? Let's make sure we're serving correct. Like, let's look at our percentages. You can chart the match, see what percentage of points you're winning on your first serve, see the percentage on second serve, and then your second serve return points, and then watch the match, and you'll have a good sense. Like, you know what? Anytime I get a short forehand in the middle of the court, I'm only winning 40% of those points when I need to be up to 70, 80%, right? So I think diagnosing the problem is really, really important. In terms of actual drills and exercises, like one exercise that I saw Djokovic do a lot, and I did it with Murray when I practiced with him in Dubai a few times. Very basic. I think the more simple the exercise, the better, where one player on the far end, let's just say, is hitting everything cross court, and then I'm hitting one cross court and then one down the line. They're hitting everything cross. I got one cross, one down the line. And so you do that until you get to 20 balls, break for 20 seconds, and then do it again. Right. And so you're going, that's a great exercise because you're running side to side. You're hitting, one person is hitting cross court, and then the other person is hitting cross one line. I found that drill to be physically demanding to make 20 balls, especially if you're doing it with a player that's able to push you. You're changing direction, so that's a tough skill. You're also like trying to make 20 balls, so it's mentally challenging. I did that with Murray a few times. You can also change the drill. Instead of one cross, one line, you can go two cross, one line, and the other person goes cross. And then the final modification of the drill is one person only hits cross and the other person hits line. And I remember when I was like one cross, one line, one cross, one line, that type of drill. And I remember I did that with Murray, and our goal was to do it for a minute. And he had one of those heart rate monitors around his chest. And so he did it for a minute. And then in the 20 seconds after a minute, he was looking at his watch, or his trainer was looking at the watch, and he was saying, okay, Andy, like, get the heart rate down, breathe through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I mean, Murray was and is a total beast, and I think exercises like that are very, very helpful. I think the quality and the intention, and I think the intensity that you bring to any exercise, you can make it very physically demanding. There's certain exercises, like I've seen kids, like I might give a very, very physical exercise to a kid, but if they're not going to give 100%, it's not going to really benefit them. It really is up to the individual, right, to push themselves to that level where they can actually feel it, and they can feel their lungs burn. I mean, you can be hitting cross courts and you can make that the most physical exercise ever if you're hitting and then you're recovering, and then you're hitting and then you're recovering. It's really could be anything. I know one story I heard about Bjorn Borg, and I'm sure many people heard this, when he won the French Open and he was going into Wimbledon. There's obviously that 2-week gap between going from clay to grass. And you'll have heard the story where he just played 5 sets every day. That's just what he did. He just played 5 sets of tennis for 14 days going into Wimbledon. And that was how he conditioned himself. There's so many different ways. And I sometimes think sometimes old school is the best way, as long as they're not getting injury free, or as long as they're not getting injured. What I want to encourage is people to be injury free. And I would always encourage like prehab and rehab work. And I feel that's where things are different nowadays in 2023 to maybe 20, 30 years ago, where we really have a much better understanding of rehab and prehab. And, you have these athletes that are all traveling with trainers and physios and sometimes osteopaths. and doctors, and they're getting their bodies aligned, and they're manipulating the joints and the muscles, and they're really getting the body primed and ready to go. So I think, there's a lot that we can focus on to get a person from A to B, but that's where I would start.
I want to come out to Las Vegas and take a lesson so bad. I could just listen to you talk all day. Yes, no, I love that answer. I love both of those. One of the craziest things is when you're working with intermediate players and you record them playing and they're convinced that their effort level was really high, right? They come off and they're tired. And then you show them videos of them standing still in the middle of points. I'm like, please split step on every ball. I'm like, please. And then I'll be like, you had a short ball there. Do you know how long it took you to go get that ball? Could you go get it before it drops below the level of the net? Like, that's like a shark with, there's blood in the water. You're supposed to just, pounce on that, make that move, and oh man,
it's so true.
Kills me. It's so tough. And then obviously you can scaffold that up or down depending on the level. But from a footwork standpoint, I'm always preaching footwork and fitness level with a lot of the kids that I'm working with, and they think they're working hard. And I think that's a tough lesson for a lot of kids to learn. That I personally am like, I don't think I knew. I was in college playing college tennis when I'm like, man, I wish when I was in high school, I didn't know what hard work was. I wasn't working hard enough, because you learn how to work smarter and actually push yourself in the right ways. Like, it's just, anyway, maturity is the ultimate game changer, obviously.
100%. I will say, like, would you say, are you curious? I'm just curious from your perspective, would you be looking for drills? Are you interested in different drills that people can incorporate? Is that something that you're kind of asking as well? Because I know I'm giving a broad answer, because I can give a lot of drills. If
I loved your answer. That was not a question that I originally had when I started doing the pod, and then I've thrown it in sometimes, and I had some. And one of the things has been I got a really cool drill out of Coach Andy Brandy. I need to go back through the pods and just like write down. I could like make a little workbook to keep of a drill that I got, from every person I had the chance to interview. But even, for people need to hear that, because somebody can listen to this pod and say, hey, let's go out and see if we can do, 20 ball or even 10 balls for some people of 2 cross 1 line. Just hearing that, it's something that someone can go out and then they can do. And I think that that's huge, especially because it's something you can do with just one other person.
100%.
Right? I think that in itself was a great drill. I might have to have an additional podcast just with you picking your brain on drills. If you've got the ultimate handbook over there, we might have to pick your brain some more.
Got some good stuff here for sure.
At some point.
Yeah, let's do that.
No, it would be super fun. I would love that. I mean, if you've got another one that comes to mind immediately, do you just think is like great, high quality? I'll let you go ahead and give us one, but then I've got other questions I want to get through, and I don't want to take all your time today.
I mean, one, basic, it depends on your numbers. We're chock-a-block at our academy. So there's times where we have, 4 players on a court. Let's say we have a day where we can't get 2 players on the court because we've got so many players. So you're always trying to make the most of half-court drills, right? So, like a cross-court drill that we do. And again, it's important that the players recover in between shots, where you've 2 players rallying cross-court, and one player, their goal is to hit 30 balls past the 60-foot line. And we typically put a cone down, but we also have a line on the court where they can see if their shot lands past the 60-foot line. Mm-hmm. And then the other person is focusing on calling the shot. So kind of like what you mentioned about that person, like, hey, did you realize how long it took for you to move up to the short ball, and then you're making contact below the height? Like the what I mean by call the shot is, and I'm sure many people are familiar with this, is as soon as the shot leaves your opponent's racket, you're calling out loud and early before it lands on your side of the court. You're either saying forward, stay, or back, because you're training your eyes, right? You're training, I'm either moving forward to this ball, I'm holding my ground, I'm going to stay here, or I'm going to move back. A lot of players, if you see them hitting, you'll notice that their eyes aren't engaged. And so they'll get a short ball. Someone will drop the ball short, but they won't move their feet up to it. Or they'll get a deep ball and they'll end up catching it late, way behind them, and then the rally will break down. The rally is not their footwork, or sorry, the problem is not their footwork. The problem is their eyes, because they didn't see the ball early enough and they didn't have the eye to brain connection to actually move their, they didn't recognize it. They didn't move back. So yes, it's footwork, but it's actually more the eyes and a little bit of laziness. So they got to make sure they get back in time, get the feet prepared, hit the shot, and then recover to the right spot. So that way, that drill, you got one person obviously working on their depth and working on their consistency to make 30 balls. And then you got the other person working on their eyes. And then you can reverse rolls you do that again on the reverse rolls, do that on the forehand side, and then do 2 more rounds on the backhand side. That's going to take a good 45 minutes to an hour of your practice if it's done correct. Well, maybe a little bit less, but if it's done correctly. So again, good drill. It's effective. It's good for everyone.
If you're working that directly where you don't have 2 players, it was a private lesson with a coach and 1 player. Have you ever ran that drill where the player is responsible for the depth and calling?
Yeah, like for example, well, I hit in some of my lessons sometimes. So if I'm hitting down the middle of the court, I put the 2 cones down, like almost like a goalpost through the middle of the court. And I say to my player, I say, okay, let's go for 30 balls past the 60-foot line. But I also want, so they're aware that they're trying to get depth on the shot. And then I say, well, you also have to call the shot. So while I'm hitting with them, I'll throw a slice in, drop it short, and I'll see whether they're moving their feet up to it. And I'm amazed at how much better these kids could be at seeing the ball. Like depending on their age, there's an age where they really struggle to see the ball. Well, some of them struggle to see the ball. And then just when they get a little older, they see it quicker. So, you could do it hitting, you could probably do it feeding as well. I think you could do it without another player for sure.
Yeah, that's the way I was envisioning it if I was going to use that. And I like the way they're shooting. I also set up the goalposts a lot as kind of the way to do it. And I think, I like that drill a lot. I've done similar drills, but not that exact same thing. And the calling, I think, is huge. I would love to see someone do, just from my years of coaching, a research study of that recognition of that forward, back, stay. Are those the 3 words you're using?
Yeah, you could say up, stay, back, or you can say forward, stay, hold, back, whatever works for the player. Really doesn't matter.
Up, back, hold, whatever it might be. Run that drill. Time how quickly after a ball is struck. This would take a lot of effort, but to do it with a group of 100 different players, and then give them a kind of a background check of how many of them are multi-sport athletes. Or that how many of them maybe play strategic type games. Like, I would be curious, because my belief would be that someone who's extremely strategic and competitive, or someone that is a multi-sport athlete, would recognize that opportunity to move forward a lot more quickly than maybe someone who doesn't cross-train. Play another sport. I would think that not that kids play a lot of chess anymore, but if you're thinking 2-3 balls ahead because you're planning, 100%. You're looking for that ball. Because I always try to teach the young people that I work with, you're not trying to hit winners. You're trying to make your opponent uncomfortable, but you play points to get short balls. Transition skills are what separate levels. And if it turns into a winner, that's great. But we'll always take that. But that's not the ultimate goal. Your goal is to get that short ball, and that's a better way to approach it, is kind of the mindset that I like to go with. But anyway,
I love that. And I will say, I agree 100% to what you're saying. It was interesting. Something came up online recently where Alcaraz is a big believer in chess. He plays a lot of chess. That just came up on my feed, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But about a year and a bit ago, I had the privilege to be on court with Andre Agassi for about 4 hours. One of the players I was working with had asked Agassi for a lesson on his forehand, and Agassi kind of appreciated, like, this kid's got the balls to ask me to do a lesson and not asked to charge him or anything. I mean, I can't imagine the price of a 4-hour lesson with Agassi, but went over to his house. He was blowing the courts. He was there about 45 minutes before the lesson was to begin, like blowing the courts. There wasn't a single speck of dust on the court. Really, really nice guy. Had a great session. And to your point, what you just mentioned, but at one point in the session, Agassi says, there's no one shot in tennis where you're trying to just end the point. And I was like, really? Like, you're not going for a winner? Like, when the opponent's off the court and like, you've got the whole court open, you're trying to just end the point in that ball. He's like, no. He says the only time, he says, you should really be focusing on just ending the point is like an overhead on top of the net. He's like, the idea is just to, like, a hard, firm 85% ball into the corner, get them in trouble. They're going to, hit a weak shot, and then you hit another hard, firm 85% ball into the other corner. Next thing you know, they're on the defense. They're just getting it back. And then boom, you hit another one into the corner. They don't get it. And anyone that watched Agassi play saw that was how he played. Like, he never took unnecessary risk. He played the game to such perfection at times. He was such a joy to watch. And I found that mindset to be very interesting, because it went against what I had believed, because I thought, like, oh yeah, you're meant to go for winners on certain shots. And again, each person's unique. It's I'm sure if we asked Nick Kyrgios, what his approach, he'd probably say, no, you should go big and try to hit winners with his forehand and his whole game, So, but again, I thought that was a very interesting answer from a legend like him.
I've actually heard that Nick is quite the strategist. That he's got quite the tennis brain, which it does. He's a savant in his own right, I feel like. 100%. And it doesn't necessarily always get the credit for that.
100% agree.
But just one of my favorite drills that I do, and I don't get to do it all the time because you have to have a player that's of a pretty high level, and it usually has to be where you've got two, in the same lesson, and I don't get to do that as often as I'd like, because you got to have a couple players similar level that have some skills. But one of my favorite drills is a forced error drill where you're playing the point, and this can be from a drop feed, where you can do drop feed points, or you can play it out with a serve or whatever. But essentially, if you hit a winner, and that winner wasn't a ball that you hit out of the air, you have to replay the point. It does not count. So your goal is to make someone uncomfortable, play that low slice, hit the ball hard up the middle, get them on their back foot, make them uncomfortable. But if you come forward and your last shot doesn't have to be a winner, but if your last shot is out of the air and it is a winner, you get 2 points.
Interesting.
Because I'm always trying to get them to move forward.
That's so interesting.
But if I've tried to do some similar things in a group setting, and then you've always got that one kid who he's like, they won't run hard for the ball. And they're like, that was a winner. We're going to have to replay the point. Like, and then you have to have a punishment for that kid that's being a turd, just messing up the drill. But otherwise, it's a way of like making people uncomfortable. And then I think that the adjustment that turned into it was, if someone comes forward, if they came forward and they hit a ball out of the air, and I said, like, this was the adjustment we had to make. And you end up hitting a perfect passing shot or a speed lob. Yeah. That's a winner. You could have that point. Because they were like, exactly. I just hit a perfect shot. They came forward, and I'm like, okay, you can have that point. We'll change the rules for that. Like, that was the adjustment we had to make. Yeah. But no, I saw huge results from that. And I've started to see kids wanting to come forward more and more by incentivizing it, and they built a comfort level with it. And then I also saw them noticeably trying to do things that got under their opponent's skins, because it's hard to incentivize and get young people to get competitive in the right way with people they practice with all the time. It's really hard to play your friends well. It is. It's hard. There's some psychology there, but it's hard to do that day in, day out. If you find that friend that you can really go to it with, and you don't need that outside motivator or that thing to do. But I found that that's a really good drill for kind of like almost changing tennis slightly and spicing it up with those extra kind of limitations. And I liked kind of the end results that came from that. So
I like that. I like that. I think that's a great one. And I like what you said, like, because let's say we're doing the drill and you come to the net, you approach me, and I'm on the dead run, and I hit like a fantastic running forehand down the line. would be disappointing if you're like, you have to play that point again. Like, so I like what you said, like where if it's a passing shot winner, you can get away with it. But I think what it's doing is it's teaching kids to just to be aware of their shot selection, right? And not to be, because so many points are lost because they're not playing the percentages and they're choosing the wrong shots, you know. So I do like that. I mean, we do a lot of drills here at the No Quit Tennis Academy where there's stipulations, you know, like what you have there. And you know, today, for example, we had a practice where you would, you know, the whole focus was serve +1 and return +1, because, you know, we know they're the most important shots in tennis. If you can't serve and hit your first shot and return hit your first shot, you're going to be in big trouble.
Right.
So we had we incentivized them like, hey, and again, you need a certain level of maturity when you do these drills, because kids will find loopholes and they'll start doing the most ridiculous stuff to get a free point or an extra point if they know that that's on the line. So we had a drill where it was serve +1, where if you won the point, if you either got a free serve, so either an ace or an unreturnable, or you served and you won the point with let's just say your forehand, like you hit a winner or forced your opponent into an error, that was worth 2 points. But if you missed your first serve, then and they returned, if you missed your first serve and the returner's about to return and they win the point within 2 shots, then they get 2 points. Right. So it's incentivizing the returner to step in and kind of play a little bit more aggressive on the return, because that's something that we wanted our kids to be aware of. We wanted them to like step up and actually put pressure on the returns.
Right.
So that was something new that we did today that I enjoyed. But again, what I said was there's a certain level of maturity to the drill, because let's say I hit a first serve, you hit a fantastic return, and then in the back of my mind, I've like a deep ball. And I'm like, well, if I hit a winner here, I'll get 2 points. And I just lash a forehand. Yeah. It's clearly not the right shot to make. So that's where the coaches come in and have to, like, you know, teach the kids, like, you know, be aware.
Yeah. No, it's so, because it's so dependent upon who you're working with.
Yeah.
And what their level of maturity is.
Exactly.
And also what their skill set is. And that's why I feel like that's what's great about tennis is so many of these drills, someone could hear this, get an idea, and they can scaffold it, and you can make it harder, or you can make it easier. You can do a different version of the same drill and kind of get a similar result if you're trying to work on mindset stuff or whatever. I think that's a great drill too. It has to do with intention. It has to do with being aggressive in the right moments and all of those things. And I think those are important things that have to be taught. Some kids, you got to spell it out for them. You do, not even just kids, but young adults even, like they need to hear it. Depends on their personality, so to speak. But I do think, and that's just knowing your players. So okay, sure. There's no way I'm getting through all these questions. This would have to be a three-part episode. I'm gonna skip some of my normal ones. Okay. And I'm going to go to this one because I always think that it's a great one. If you could go back and give advice to your 13-year-old self,
great question.
What would it be?
That's a really, really good question. If I had to go back to my 13-year-old self, what would it be? There was some really solid advice that I got at 13 that really helped me. So I'll share that first, and then I'll also share the areas that I didn't feel I did very well. My coach, Larry Jurevich, he coached me from 13 up to about 17, almost 18. He now runs 3 tennis centers in Vancouver, Canada. And he was living in Ireland at the time, and he coached a group of us boys that ended up playing college tennis. James Kluski, who went to LSU. We had Darren McLaughlin, went to Indiana. We had Rory Green, who went to, we had a bunch of great tennis players that came out of our place. And one thing that he said to me, he says, write on your wall. My mom was really pissed off about it, but write on your wall, failure is my fuel. And so he encouraged me at a young age to accept failure, and not only to accept it, but to see it as a good thing. And so that was massive, because what I would say to most kids and to most people is they get way too obsessed with rankings, results, UTRs, and really, really unimportant things. So many people care about what's not important. And I see stress coming up. I see anxiety. I see a lack of joy. Eventually, kids that end up not only hating the sport, but they end up hating their parents because their parents are forcing them into playing. This game is meant to be played. It's a game at the end of the day, and it's meant to be fun. And games, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And if you don't have a growth mindset, you're going to get into major trouble in this sport. And there's a great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. She's a Stanford professor. I recommend it to all my parents. I recommend it to all the kids. It is a fantastic book on how to approach tennis and how to approach improvement. And we've got to take the focus away from winning and losing and rankings and results. And we've got to focus it on, am I doing the right thing every day? Am I giving my best effort? Am I giving a great attitude? Are you telling me, like, just, John Wooden, by the way, who's a UCLA, you know who he is, a legend of a coach,
right,
at UCLA. He spoke about the same thing. He's like, if I have a kid and he gives his best effort with a great attitude and he ends up getting a C in the class, that's not a failure. He did his best, and you got to encourage that. And I don't like this obsession with rankings and results. And what's funny is the funny side to it is that when you don't focus on rankings and results, and you focus on your best effort, and you focus on doing the right thing and playing free and enjoying yourself, your rankings and results naturally get higher, right? So that's the ironic part of the whole story, So the less you focus on ranking and results, the better. So that's something I would tell my 13-year-old self. I would remind myself, one of the other things I was told was progress equals success. So in other words, focusing on progress every day versus the rankings and results. That's it. That's the most important thing. Can we make improvements every day? I would probably say one thing that I didn't really think of at a young age was taking care of my body. And a lot of players get injured. I see it now with juniors. They've got hip injuries, they've got wrist injuries, they've got shoulder injuries. It ends up affecting them in college. I got injured in college. I know an individual right now who's in college who hasn't played in 2.5 years because of injury, which is extremely sad for that individual. And I would say, take care of your body. It's so important that you take care of your body. You must stretch every day. You must be doing your core work. You must be going to the gym and doing the right exercises, not heavy weights, but you can do band work. You can take care of your body. You need to be doing the exercises that you see when you go on YouTube and you watch Carlos Alcaraz and Nadal and Federer. Go online and see it. You'll see them warming up their body. If you're not taking care of your body the right way, it's an injury waiting to happen. And so I would absolutely give that advice to my 13-year-old self, which I didn't take heed on, because at 17 years of age, I was injured for 1.5 years with a wrist injury. So I didn't play tennis for 1.5 years because of that reason. I would also say, be aware of your coaches. Be aware of your coaches in that, make sure you work with a coach that you enjoy and that you believe in. And that's really, really important. And that believes in you, not just you believe in, but they believe in you and you have a connection. That's really, really important to have a good connection, because if you have a great coach, I mean, it's a gift. It's a real gift to have a good coach. It's just such a gift to have a great coach, So I'd say be very aware and careful in your decision making with regards to coaches. So that refers to not only as your junior coach, but also as your college coach, as your professional coach. It's very important that you surround yourself with the right people, high character people who have good values, that their heart is in the right place. They're not just trying to take your money. They care about you as an individual. That is very, very important. So take care of your body, get the right coaches, work hard, don't focus on results, and make sure that you surround yourself with people that are better than you. Make sure that if you're the best person in the group, that's a big problem. You've got to make sure you're around people that can make you better, that can push you, and that can challenge you. And you've got to find a way to not be the best. You're striving to be the best, but you've got to be beaten up a little bit, you know, because you've got to see where you're weak. People have got to be able to beat you so you can see where you're weak, you can improve, and then you can move on from there. So there's some of the things that I would say, along with obviously the most important thing at the end of the day is you got to love it. You got to enjoy yourself. Like, think back to the reason why you lifted up a tennis racket in the first place. The good chances that is because it brought you a lot of joy. Most people that play tennis and got into it is because they enjoyed it. They like the feeling of hitting the ball up and down. And I think it's important that kids remind themselves of why they're out here in the first place. If it's an extrinsic reason and a parent is pushing them and they don't want to be there, then it's probably not the right sport for them. They've got to be doing things that are intrinsically right for them, that they care about because they love the sport. And if you've got that passion and love and you're doing it for the right reasons and you're surrounding yourself with good people and you're doing all the right things, I mean, you're kind of bound for success, in my opinion, you know. And even, you know, if you're in a location like yourself that maybe doesn't have as many tennis players or doesn't have the location or doesn't have as many facilities as a big city, that's okay. You can still get through it. I mean, there are countless examples of people that can overcome these obstacles and adversity. Two Irish guys that I know, real quick, Daniel Glancy, one of them, and another guy, Julian Bradley. Both of them are from the countryside in Ireland, didn't grow up in the city near Dublin, and they had to commute 2 to 3 hours every day just to play tennis. And they ended up playing Davis Cup for the country. Daniel played Davis Cup. I think Julian did as well. And they played professional tennis. And that's a real success story, in my opinion. So, you know, these are some of the bits of advice. I probably could write a book on this whole thing, to be honest, Ship. But
you should.
They're the first things that come to mind.
I read it. I would be down. I love that.
That's funny.
No, I know. I love that answer. I love every part of that answer. And if you're that person right now that, you know, you feel like you're the best player in your group, sometimes it's tough when you don't have as many options. And I think if you've got the right coach in your corner, it's easy to maybe have a conversation with them about that. Like, hey, like, how can I push myself? And because your coach might not see the same thing that you see. And then maybe you can be hearing from them what they feel like you really need to be working on to be that person that you might already think that you are. And then the second thing is, if you're in a small town, but you need to get out, like that coach, most coaches, they do this because, I won't say most, but there's a lot of coaches out there, they do this because they love it. And if you spend enough time with someone, most coaches actually do want to help. And if you show that you're motivated, like me being someone from a small town, if someone comes to me and they're like, I really want to push myself and I really am looking, how can I get better and this and that, I will help them get hooked up with another coach or another facility that they can commute to once a week, twice a week, once a month, supplementally, whatever it is, to get those matches in, to get those practices in. And then, you know, because it's not convenient or affordable for you to do that, you know, 5, 6, 7 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever. Let's talk about how we can make what you're doing here even more worthwhile. And I it's all about having those open lines of communication is just something I think people need to hear. Have that conversation with your coach, like
100%.
And it's a game changer when you do. Open line of communication is huge.
And if there is an individual in that situation where, let's say, they're top of their group, they're in a rural area or something like that, you can still improve your serve. You can still improve your fitness. I mean, there's still major things that you can improve on your own. Not to mention, by the way, you can do a ton of hand feeds on your own. I was just thinking of this the other day. Like, I used to, in Ireland, like there were so many times I would just do hand feeds, like throw the ball up, hit it, throw the ball up, hit it. Hand feeds are incredibly helpful for individuals. So if you are someone, like I was in that situation a lot where I was on my own a lot, I couldn't get guys to practice with. As a really youngster, I would hit against the wall. I would hit serves. I would video my serve. I would do hand feeds. I would do fitness. I would do whatever it took to get better. I would watch a lot of tennis. I mean, if you do all those things, and certainly nowadays with social media and YouTube and everything, you have everything at your disposal to get better. There's no reason why you can't learn, you know, because you know, a lot of people end up playing better tennis when Wimbledon's on because they're visualizing and they're seeing what players are doing, what the pros are doing. And that's, you know, learning by watching professional tennis is extremely, extremely useful, you know?
Exactly. And it's even with the wall, like you're saying, or recording yourself, whatever it might be, compare your serve, practice with those people in your group that you think you're better than it until every time you're returning their first serve, it's like returning a second serve. How aggressively can you return
Yep.
their serves? Um,
Yep.
Serving off the wall and immediately moving forward is a great way to learn how to hit really good half volleys.
Yep.
It's a skill set that just hit that first
Right.
half volley right after that serve as you move forward, and then try to keep every ball in the air all the way until you can touch that wall with your racket or until you miss the volley or whatever it might be.
Yep.
There's always ways to get better, like you're saying. So like there really aren't a lot of excuses. If you want to get better, it's there are ways to do it. So,
Yep.
and maybe they're listening to podcasts and they're hearing
Yeah.
that right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
All this helps, you know?
Exactly. Oh man, I don't know. I want to sit here and talk to you about your tennis hot takes and all the things that you know drive you crazy in the world and pick your brain more about junior tennis and your experience. But I think that this is going to run so long, it's going to be crazy. So I'm going to really quickly. I wanted to give you the opportunity. Could you tell us what is your happiest tennis moment?
Oh, that's a good question. Happiest tennis moment. I mean, there's so many, but I'm going to go back to the very beginning and I'm going to say, um, I remember, so I grew up in Dublin, Ireland, and I remember when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years of age. I played tennis with my mom in my local tennis club. It's called Castleknock Lawn Tennis Club. And I remember, I was probably about 7 or 8. Yeah. I remember I couldn't return her first serve. In my opinion, I was like, this late, like my mom's got a massive first serve. Now, years to come, I looked at her serve and it's like 20 miles an hour. So it's funny how it's changed when you get older and you
Yeah.
see things for what they actually are. But I remember returning her serve once because it had a bit of pace on it. And I remember returning it. And the level of joy that I got from that returning one serve, honestly, I think that's what like led to me being a pro tennis player because it was like a high of all highs. I was like, oh my God, I actually returned her serve. And a few days later, she brought me back to play and I had a bad attitude. She told me we're going to play for an hour. And something happened where we were like 20 minutes into it, 25 minutes, and I behaved poorly in some way. I did something that was not right. And she's like, okay, you're done. And I said, no, 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 I want to play. Like, I love the game. And she's like, no, you're done. And I was like, no. And I was screaming. So this is a combination of my happiest memory and probably my most traumatic memory. And then she ended up taking me off the court and be like, no, you're done. My mom like is pretty tough like that.
Yeah.
And I remember what that did was it actually lit a flame in me. So like this flame was there and then it lit a flame underneath me where it's like, I will never like mess around. I'm going to come here and I'm going to give my best effort and nothing's going to stop me. And so that those two moments probably stand out to me as my most joyful moments, along with the tour moments. I would say with Jeff qualifying into the US Open, obviously amazing experience. That was one where tears were shed and it was years of hard work to get to that moment. You know, there were lots of moments, Davis Cup moments for my country, saving match points, winning challengers, winning a challenger in Kerry, like all this stuff were very, very happy moments. I will say, Ship, there were probably just as many, if not more, sad moments. I mean, there was a lot of
I
down
usually don't
moments.
ask that one. I usually don't
Yeah,
ask that one.
I would say there were probably more on the tour because you're taking a loss pretty
Yeah.
much every week, and it was rough. I had a lot of lows, and yeah, what a journey! What a journey!
Let's see. Here at the Grassroots Tennis Pod, we believe in giving people their flowers. Who is someone underappreciated in the tennis community?
Are you talking about in general or?
It could be a specific individual that you know, or it can be in general. It's however you'd like to answer the question.
We have a saying in our academy. It was created by the founder. a guy named Ryan Wolfington. And we have a banner. We have banners around our academy that speak to our values and what we care about. And we have a banner that says, "Parents make it possible." And I think kids and even coaches, we sometimes forget like all the sacrifices parents have to make to get their kids to play the game, to get them the racket in their hand, the shoes, the food in their stomach, to actually be out there. And I think parents have to be appreciated. Some parents can be challenging, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that are driving their kids to and from practice and getting them there. And I think I just think parents have to be appreciated for all they do, and for their sacrifice and their financial commitment and the emotional commitment and everything they do to support their child. Obviously coaches as well, and the level of sacrifice that they give is quite remarkable, but I'm going to go with tennis for now. Or we're going to go with parents for now. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. Last question here. I could probably pick your brain for 2 days straight. I could talk to a brick wall for an hour, so I could definitely talk to you longer. We really want to continue to just pick the brains of tennis people. We know there's a lot of people out there that either have a great story that they need to share, or they just need the opportunity to give back. Who do you think needs to come on the Grassroots Tennis Pod? Whose brain do we need to pick? Keep in mind, whoever you say, it could be a coach, community leader, or player, but you have to help us get this person on the pod. You're the person with the connections, not me. I'm merely a passenger on this journey of tennis enlightenment.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many people. There's so many people I could connect you with. You know, being in Vegas, working at the No Quit Tennis Academy, I'm going to go to our executive director, Tim Blankiron. Tim is the, he's currently been coaching Asia Mohammed on tour. He's coached Asia for years. He also coached Jeannie Bouchard for a couple of years. He's the mastermind behind the academy. He's, an amazing guy. His son, who's 17, is a high performance junior player. Tim has coached at every single level. He coached a world team tennis team. He coached professional team. He's done it all. And he's an amazing guy. He's from Australia. He's got a huge personality. I'd also be happy to connect you with any of our coaches at the academy if you'd like to speak to them. We've got our co-director, Dave McPherson, who coached Bob and Mike Bryan and John Isner. Jake Lisgard, who's an amazing coach, who's with us as well, along with any of our coaches that are on our coaching staff. Also my former coach, Larry Jurovich up in Canada, who coached me from 13 to 17, who was big on the development of my game. And anyone else, like, I don't know, there's so many friends and people I know that I could connect you with.
We'll have to have conversations off the pod. You named a lot of really good names there. And honestly, the first name you gave me the idea for the first ever father-son pod. I might have to interview both of them at the same time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting, but as qualified as he is, to hear hear feedback from the guy who grew up in his house.
Absolutely.
Especially with the level that he's that you're saying that he's playing at. If he's a high level junior, that would be kind of cool.
He's an excellent player. Tim won NCAAs as well as when he played at UNLV. So he's a high level tennis player. He's a high level tennis coach. He's an even better person. His son's an amazing guy, Dylan. So, let me know.
We'll have to talk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. And if people want to see more of what you've got going on at the academy, do you want to drop your first and foremost where they can follow you on socials, and then what else that they can follow? Yeah. So
personally, my Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Instagram handle is at James McGee01. So JamesMcGee01. The No Quit Tennis Academy is at No Quit Tennis. That's for Instagram. And then I also work for, I'm part of the Inspiring Children Foundation, which we never really got a chance to talk about today, but it's helping kids with their physical, emotional, and mental health. That's something that's important to me. And their Instagram is at Inspiring Children. And so, yeah, if you want to kind of get in touch with me or learn more about the No Quit Tennis Academy or the Inspiring Children Foundation, check that out, along with just go on Google and we'll have, the websites for each of them as well. And, all the information to contact me and anything about, you can find it online.
Okay. Well, I think that everyone listening to this pod should definitely go give some follows out on Instagram. And if you like what we're doing here at the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, do us a favor, share this episode with someone that you know loves the game of tennis. You can really help us out by hitting that like button and hitting subscribe. This episode's going to be going up immediately onto YouTube and onto Spotify, and hopefully soon onto all places that you like to find your podcast. You can also find us on socials. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Grassroots Tennis Pod, on Twitter at GTennisPod, because Twitter said that Grassroots was too long of a word, they wouldn't fit, which is unfortunate. We are doing follow for follow on socials. We don't always do it super quickly because we're a one-man show here right now, other than when my wife helps me with things, but she's busy. We have a baby coming here in about 6 weeks, and life is getting
congratulations.
crazy. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And if you have any follow-up questions, guys, I know how to get a hold of James, and we can feel free to email us at grassrootstennispod@gmail.com. Thank you so much, sir. I enjoyed it. I feel like this is a great episode, and I hope that we didn't keep you too long.
No, I appreciate it, Chip. Thanks for having me. It's great to connect with you. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your insight. Hopefully, some people found this interesting and insightful. And again, thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm glad that we connected.
All right, sounds good. Take care.
Thank you.